Are you ready for the rapture? Or do you think you are? What if I told you that Jesus revealed that 99% of Christians will be left behind because of 3 hidden sins within the church itself? In today's video, you'll hear the powerful story of Angela Whitmore, a woman who died, was with Jesus, and returned with an urgent message about what will happen in September 2025. Like, subscribe to the channel, and comment here which city you're watching from. This message needs to reach as many people as possible. My name is Angela Whitmore. I have 49 years old. I was born and raised in the state of Texas, in a small town called Bryan. I grew up in the church, literally. My parents were choir leaders. I played piano in the youth service, and I've been involved in ministry since I was 12. I married a deacon, had 2 children, and our lives revolved around the gospel. Or at least, that's what I thought. On the day July 6, 2025, my routine seemed normal. I woke up early, made breakfast, read a psalm, and went to the women's prayer service. I remember sharing a prayer request for a sister who was a bit off track, and we all agreed to pray for her. But, if I'm honest, what I heard there was mostly judgment disguised as pity. In the afternoon, I went to visit my mother. On the way back, it started raining heavily. The road became slippery, and on a stretch of Highway 6, I lost control of the car. It all happened so fast. The sound of the impact, the shattering of glass, the pain, and then nothing. I opened my eyes and thought she was still alive, but what I saw around me was disturbing. A thick darkness like smoke, odorless, windless, just oppressive. I wasn't in the car. She was standing, barefoot, on dry, cracked ground. The sky was a color I couldn't name, like rust mixed with pitch. And then I heard it. Thousands of voices, screams, wails. Some so desperate my bones seemed to tremble. All around me, human shadows writhed as if they were burning from within. I covered myself with my arms, trying to understand where I was, when I heard something that broke me inside. Someone shouting repeatedly, but I was from the church. I was from the church. I didn't want to believe it, but a realization invaded me. That was the place where Christians who thought they were saved were being left, not for lack of faith, but for something that stained their hearts. Suddenly, a white light cut through the room like a sword, and everything went silent. The most powerful and loving presence I'd ever felt appeared before me. Jesus. But he wasn't smiling. His gaze was filled with sadness. He called me by name and said, "Angela, there are many who claim to know me, but they are far from my heart. I need to show you why 99% of my children are not ready for the rapture." I fell to my knees. Fear and shame swallowed me, but he reached out his hand and said, "You'll see, and then you'll come back." That's how my soul began a journey I never imagined, one that would change everything I thought I knew about faith, church, and salvation. Jesus held my hand, and even there, surrounded by that dark place, his presence was the only anchor of peace. It wasn't like the comforting embraces we imagine in songs. There was pain in his eyes, pain at seeing his children lost. "Angela, look carefully. Many who claim to serve me do not live like my disciples. I want to show you the first sin, the one that has extinguished the light of many." We were transported in the blink of an eye. Now I saw myself inside a modern church, packed with people, huge screens, colorful lights, praise songs that shook the building, people with their hands raised, dancing, crying. I smiled. For a moment, it was familiar. It felt like a revival. But then, Jesus made me see hearts. The light around the people began to change. Some continued to glow like liquid gold, but many, many others began to dim. I saw small wisps of smoke rising from their mouths, as if invisible words were poisoning the air. And then I saw it. Groups of people in corners of the temple, disguising their conversations with hugs and fake smiles. Some were saying, "We should pray for the sister. Have you seen how different she walks? I think the pastor has been a little weak lately. That new family, something bothers me about them." Jesus looked at me and said in a choked voice, "They don't realize it, Angela, but gossip is like spiritual rust. It starts small, but it corrodes everything." These words are sown like dead seeds, sprouting into division, judgment, and coldness. I saw tiny demons. Yes, I saw them, hovering near these conversations. They were misshapen, seemingly made of smoke, and they laughed as they whispered more words into the believers' ears, and the more they spoke, the more extinguished the flame within their breasts became. They say, "It's just a comment. It's just concern." But behind the pity lies arrogance, the pleasure of pointing out a lack of love. Many don't even realize they are poisoning their own brothers. I wanted to scream. The scene was suffocating. It was like watching an entire church being corroded from the inside while singing, "Holy, holy, holy." And Jesus said to me, "This is the first sin. They talk about me. They sing to me, but they speak of others with malice. And how can I dwell in a heart that spits death against my children?" Then I saw something that broke me. An elderly, prayerful woman, respected by everyone. I had always seen her as a saint. But in that moment, when she heard gossip about a young woman in the church, he smiled inside, as if he felt justice in seeing someone else's downfall. Her light went out. "Angela, even the saints are falling for this." The tongue is small, but it sets entire forests on fire. I stood there in silence and watching dozens, perhaps hundreds of Christians with their eyes closed but their hearts unclean. I understood why Jesus was crying. He turned to me and said, "Come back and say it clearly. Gossip is the poison that many are drinking thinking it is communion. It is intertwined in prayer groups, church councils, among friends of faith. But where there is gossip, my glory withdraws," and then everything dissolved. We were taken to the next place, and there Jesus would show me the second sin that prevents the rapture, and this one was even more painful. I felt the wind of change before I even opened my eyes again, when I realized we were no longer in church. We were now in a house, simple, cozy, with an open Bible on the dining table and verses on the walls. There was a man, a woman, and 2 children. It was the picture of the ideal Christian family. But Jesus, with a sorrowful look in his eyes, touched my shoulder and said, "Angela, many worship me with their lips, but deny my love within their own homes. Prepare yourself. This is the second sin, the lack of forgiveness." Suddenly, my spiritual eyes were opened. I started to see the words left unsaid, the resentments held, the wounds never healed. The woman looked at her husband, but deep in her heart, she still carried hurt from something he had said years ago. The man prayed aloud, but inside he harbored resentment toward his own father. The children smiled, but they were hurt by silent rejections and absences, disguised as spiritual commitments. Jesus pointed, and in an instant, the walls rose around the hearts of that house. They were not visible to the naked eye, but spiritually, they looked like dark fortresses, barriers that prevented the flow of God's love and presence. They say they serve me, they fast, they pray, they eat communion, but they don't forgive the brother who hurt them, the spouse who failed, the father who didn't know how to love. They think they've overcome it, but they keep the pain as a relic. I saw other homes, other families, brothers who hadn't spoken in decades, mothers who claimed to love Christ but secretly hated their daughters-in-law, Christians who raised their hands in worship, but they couldn't even look someone in the church in the eye. Jesus then said something to me that cut my soul like a sharp blade. "Angela, how can I take with me someone who refuses to forgive when I was the one who died so that everyone could be forgiven?" At that moment, I saw a woman kneeling in the room, crying out for salvation, saying she wanted to be ready for the rapture. But outside, her sister lived a few blocks away and she refused to make peace because of an argument from 15 years ago. I saw her heart beating with faith, but surrounded by chains as thick as spiritual iron. Her light could neither get out nor get in. It was a prison of resentment fueled by pride. Jesus held my hand and said, "Tell them there will be no rapture for those who carry walls inside their chest. Tell them that true repentance requires real forgiveness, not just words, but reconciliation." That sentence struck me like a thunderclap. I, in that moment, remembered someone I had never truly forgiven, and I found myself weeping in the presence of the Lord. "What many don't understand, Angela," he continued, "is that not forgiving is like saying, 'I accept your blood for me, Jesus, but I do not accept that it covers the mistakes of others.' This is pride, and pride goes before a fall." He then showed me hundreds of Christians praying, fasting, and pleading, but with their eyes closed to their long-held hurts. I saw entire churches singing about unity, yet filled with hidden divisions. Heaven is a place of reconciliation, of complete love, How can I take someone who refuses to love as I have loved? And then he showed me something even more disturbing. The sky was beginning to close in over these houses. The Spirit's presence was fading away, not as a punishment, but because hearts became inaccessible. Jesus' pain wasn't anger, it was sadness. It was like seeing beloved children hurting each other with the chains of silence, hurt, and indifference. "Angela," he said with tears in his eyes, "the rapture will be a wedding, and whoever refuses to forgive still lives divorced from my heart." At that moment, something inside me snapped. I realized that, at many points in my own life, I had called it healthy distance when it was, in fact, lack of spiritual forgiveness. Jesus held my hand tightly. "You need to tell them this. Tell them there's no time to carry these prisons on their chest. September is just around the corner, and many will only be free when they free others." And then everything changed again. We were about to see the third and most devastating sin, the one who smothers the flame and silences the call. If the previous sins had cut me up inside, the next one revolted me, and it embarrassed me. Jesus, still holding my hand, led me to what appeared to be a huge shopping center, but it wasn't a physical place. It was a spiritual reflection, a representation of the priorities of millions of Christians. There, I saw people coming in and out of storefronts that glittered with promises of success, stability, beauty, and wealth. The atmosphere was vibrant, almost hypnotic. Everyone was smiling, but their eyes were empty. And the most shocking thing, many had Bibles in their hands. Some wore t-shirts with Christian slogans. Others left churches straight for that invisible mall. Jesus looked at me and said, "Angela, this is the third sin, the idolatry of comfort. They say they love me, but they left me aside on the altar of their conquests." He pointed, and I saw a Christian woman, very active in the church. She led ministries, had a well-structured family, and everyone respected her. But spiritually, her heart shone with golden layers that muffled the light within. She says I'm the center of her life, but she fears losing her home more than losing my presence. She fasts, but only when she has time. She seeks me, but only after the TV series. She calls me Lord, but only as long as I don't interfere with her finances. I cried, because, once again, I saw myself in many of these faces. Jesus continued, "They say they have faith, but they put their trust in bank accounts. They say they depend on me, but their hearts belong to stability. They didn't build altars for me, Angela. They built safes." At that moment, I saw an apocalyptic scene. Thousands of Christians preparing for the end times, stockpiling water, food, solar energy, gold, weapons, and from the outside, it seemed prudent, but inside, it was fear, it was control, it was an attempt to survive without depending on God. They're preparing to survive, but they forgot to prepare to meet me. They're cleaning out their pantries, but their hearts remain dirty. I saw impeccable homes, new cars, perfectly planned career paths. But when Jesus looked into those hearts, there was no room for him. The throne was occupied by fear of scarcity, obsession with security, desire for status. And the scariest thing, these Christians thought they were firm. Jesus said something that tore me apart. "Angela, what hurts me is not that they have things. I blessed them. What hurts me is that they trust things more than me. They love the lifestyle more than the life that comes from the Spirit." At that moment, he showed me the inside of a man's heart. Inside, there was a cross, small, hidden deep within, and around it, trophies, diplomas, investments, photos of smiling family. It was as if Jesus had turned another spiritual accessory among priorities. They want to include me, but they don't enthrone me. I've seen Christians who pray to keep their jobs, their homes, and their bills paid, but they never pray, "Lord, what do you want from me?" And Jesus said, "This is the third sin. They turned my blessings into idols, and now they prostrate themselves before their own safety. And me, I became plan B." Angela told me, "Tell them, comfort is the new golden calf, and many are worshiping him without realizing it." The pain in his voice was like silent thunder. The rapture is not for those who have accumulated wealth or stability. It is for those who live with a detached heart, in love with me, ready to follow me, even without guarantees. The vision began to darken, and then I saw myself again, high up in a place that looked like heaven. Jesus looked at the earth, And I knew what was coming now would be the most shocking revelation of all. He would show me what will happen on Rapture Day, and who will really be prepared, or not. The scenario has changed. I don't know how to explain it, but Jesus took me to a point outside of time, as if we were floating above the planet. It was like seeing Earth from afar, but with spiritual eyes. Everything was silent. Jesus didn't say a word, but I felt something sacred was about to happen. Suddenly, a sound cut through the sky as if the universe itself trembled. Era the trumpet. And then, it happened. I saw people being taken by a light so intense that I could barely look. It was as if their bodies were being pulled upward, but not by force, but by attraction, as if heaven was calling back those who belonged to it. They were men, women, young people, old people, some very simple, others almost invisible in society. No expensive clothes, no important positions, but their hearts shone like clean diamonds. They went up with tears of joy, eyes fixed on the sky, smiles that seemed to embrace eternity. It was the meeting of the groom and his bride. But then, I saw the other side. Millions, millions, remained on earth, stuck, confused, desperate. Some had Bibles in their hands. Others had just left church services. I saw pastors, ministers, worship musicians, missionaries, people who preached, sang, evangelized, but who were not taken. Most of them he shouted, "Why, Lord? I fasted. I went to church every Sunday. I would serve you." I saw a woman fall to her knees, clutching the pew of an empty church. She was crying in such pain that it felt like her heart was breaking. And she cried out, "I knew your word. How did I feel? How?" Jesus by my side cried. Yes, he was crying. His tears were not of surprise, but of sadness. And he said to me, his voice breaking, "They believed, but never purified themselves. They carried hidden sins, justified their actions, and postponed decisions. They called me Lord, but chose to love the world more." Then he showed me the hearts of those who remained, and there they were, the three spots: gossip, disguised as care; old hurts, locked behind forced smiles; attachment to possessions and status, like roots holding their souls to the ground. It was then that he told me something I will never forget. "Angela, believing in me is not enough to climb. Even the demons believe, but they do not obey. The rapture is for those whose hearts have been washed, cleansed, and surrendered." And I, trembling, asked, "But Lord, no one is perfect. Who then can ascend?" He looked me deep in the eyes and replied, "I'm not looking for perfection, Angela. I seek surrender. Hearts that love me more than they love themselves, that place me above the opinions of others, that cleanse their words, release forgiveness, and don't allow themselves to be enslaved by comfort." Then he pointed to those who had gone up and said to me, "These are no better, but they chose to live with their eyes on heaven. Even in silence, their souls cried out, 'Maranatha.'" At that moment, I saw thousands of Christians kneeling, but it was too late. The heavens had closed. The groom had taken his bride, and what was left vacillance, despair, and belated regret. "Angela, you need to warn them. There's still time, but not much." I cried like I had never cried before, because, suddenly, I understood why it was urgent. Jesus was coming back, soon, and almost the entire church was still asleep. After seeing the rapture and the cries of despair of those who remained, I felt lost. I cried, without strength, while Jesus just watched me with a look of love and urgency. He held me tenderly and said, "Angela, I know this weighs heavily on your heart, but it's not over yet. There's something I need to show you, and you'll understand why I brought you here now." Suddenly, the sky above us opened up, like a veil torn from top to bottom, and then there arose something that looked like a large calendar, suspended in the sky. It was like a book of dates, but the months weren't like ours. They were spiritual. Each month had the glow of eternity. A tone of them was trembling, pulsing as if it were alive. Jesus pointed to it, and there was written in letters that seemed to be made of light and blood, "September 2025. My body shuddered. "Lord, is it the month of your return?" Jesus did not answer immediately. He just touched the page of that calendar, and immediately I was enveloped by a new vision. We angels being positioned at the four corners of the earth. They carried trumpets, swords, and books. Their faces were serious. There was no celebration. There was a mission. I also saw clocks breaking, as if time were being ripped out of the common count. "Angela," Jesus then said, his voice as firm as thunder, "my Father has set times, and there is a time for everything under heaven. September marks a watershed for my people, but no one knows the exact day or time, right?" I asked, afraid I was interpreting it wrong. He nodded. "Yes, and that remains. Not even the angels know the instant, but the Spirit has warned those who have ears. September is no ordinary date. It's a prophetic cycle coming to an end. A spiritual harvest will be reaped. Those who are ready will rise. Those who are not will remain." The revelation cut me to the quick. I knew that thousands, perhaps millions of Christians were not prepared. They were distracted, asleep, and what I saw next made me tremble in my knees. We churches gathering, celebrating, singing, preaching about blessings and promises, while heaven prepared for judgment. We believers storing food, storing water, building bunkers, believing that this would protect them from what was to come, but their souls were naked before the sky. Jesus spoke with tears in his eyes. "Angela, they're preparing for everything, except to meet me. The enemy has deceived them with distractions, and now they think they'll have time to regret it later. But time is running out." The September page started to burn, but not with destructive fire. It was like a sacred, purifying fire. And Jesus said, "Tell them there will be no more extensions. Don't wait for visible signs, because the greatest sign is already before their eyes. The coldness of love, the mixture on the altar, the stained hearts even inside the church." Then, a large hourglass appeared before me. Golden sand slowly trickled down, but there was almost nothing left on top. "Angela," he spoke solemnly, "when the last grain falls, it will be too late. September will be the month of separation, between those who love my presence and those who only love what I offer." I wanted to beg for more time, for mercy, but before I could say a word, he spoke. Mercy is still open, but that door is closing, and many don't even realize they're still outside. I saw faces, people I knew, leaders, church members, family, friends, everyone thinking they were safe. And Jesus said to me, "That's why you're going back. You're going to tell, you're going to warn, because some will only wake up if they hear from someone who saw what's coming." The vision faded, and the calendar disappeared, but the fire of that revelation stayed inside me. And now, more than ever, I knew. September 2025 is not just a date, it's a prophetic alarm, and it's already ringing. The calendar view had disappeared, but the weight of urgency remained in my spirit like a fire that burned without consuming. Jesus was still beside me. There was no longer sadness in his eyes, but something more intense, longing. "Angela, there's one last thing I need to show you before you go back." We were transported to another scenario, a modern, very large, crowded church. It was Sunday. People were singing, dancing, raising their hands. The atmosphere was joyful, almost euphoric. But what gave me goosebumps was what I saw behind the spiritual scenes. Around the temple, angels remained still. They didn't interact. They just watched in silence. And the glory of God was held back from on high, as if it wanted to come down but could not find space. Jesus looked at me and said, "Look what's happening." He reached out his hand and my spiritual eyes opened again. I saw the thoughts of many in that church. Thoughts like, will I have enough money to stock up on more food this week? I'm worried about whether my emergency plan is ready. Maybe I'll buy another generator. I can't trust the government. They sang, "Holy Spirit, you are welcome here." But their minds were on their homes, on their savings, on their plans. Jesus said, "They are trying to protect themselves from judgment, but they have forgotten to protect their souls. They worry about what will happen to their bodies, but neglect their eternal destiny." I then saw entire families gathered in their homes, stocking food, installing reinforced locks, organizing water, weapons, gold, and cryptocurrency deposits. What impressed me most was seeing open Bibles next to escape route maps. They think they are preparing themselves spiritually, but they are only feeding fear, and where there is fear, there is no true faith. Jesus then pointed to two types of houses. In one, everything was ready materially, but the spiritual environment was dry, lifeless, and full of tension. The Bible was on the shelf, but dusty, used as decoration. In the other house where there was simplicity, little food, few resources, but the family prayed together every day. There was forgiveness in the eyes, love between the members, and the presence of the Spirit hovered there like a gentle breeze. "Angela," he said in a firm voice, "heaven doesn't look for bunkers. Heaven looks for broken hearts. They are concerned about their pantries, but they forget that it is the interior that will be weighed in the scales." Those words, they cut me. I've found myself in so many situations in the past where I prioritized stability over obedience, where I feared the collapse of the world, and didn't fear the coldness of my faith. Jesus then opened his hands and showed me two objects. In one, a jar full of olive oil, transparent and fragrant. In the other, a golden chest, shiny but hollow inside. One leads to eternity, the other leads to disappointment. Tell them, Angela, that they prepare oil in their hearts, that the rapture does not require inventory, it requires holiness. He then showed me something shocking, a crowd running towards churches, but the doors were closed. It was right after the rapture, and everyone was knocking, screaming, begging, but the time for preparation was over. This is what will happen to many. They are waiting for the final sign to repent, but when it comes, it will already be too late. I cried. I screamed inside. I wanted to go back in time, warn everyone I know, but Jesus looked at me with authority and said, "You will come back, you will tell, you will scream if necessary, because there is still time, but very little." And then, he showed me a heart on fire. It shone with pure intensity. It was the symbol of what he seeks. This is the kind of heart that will ascend with me, full of oil, detached from the world, healed of sorrows, free from the evil tongue. I still find such hearts, but they are few. Everything around him began to fade. His presence began to slowly fade away, and I knew it was time to go back. When the spirit world began to disappear around me, it wasn't like waking up from a dream. It was like being ripped from a place where I truly belonged. Jesus looked at me one last time before I left. His eyes were still full of love, but there was press, an urgency that burned brighter than anything I'd ever felt. "Angela," he said softly but firmly, "take this message. Don't hide it. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't protect reputations. Protect souls. They need to know, even if they hate you for it." And then, he reached out his hands and placed something inside my chest. I felt like a new heart entered me, pulsing with a light so intense that my physical body, still dead, trembled on the hospital stretcher. My heart had stopped for 14 minutes, and at that exact moment, I went back. The pain hit me like a wave. Sounds, lights, screams, alarms, hands pressing against my chest, the metallic taste of life returning, and above all, the weight of the mission. The voices around said, "She's back. She's alive. It's a miracle." But I could barely speak. I was weak, my eyes filled with tears, not just from the physical pain, but for the pain of what I saw. I looked around and the first thing I whispered was, "Jesus is coming back and almost no one is ready." The nurses looked at each other. My husband, Michael, fell to his knees beside the bed. He wept, thanking God that I was alive. But when I tried to explain what had happened, something different happened to him. It wasn't shock. It wasn't denial. It was recognition. He had also felt something at that very moment, as if the Spirit had touched him before I even woke up. "Angela, what did you see?" he asked, his eyes wide. "The rapture is going to happen in September, and the church is not ready." Jesus showed me the three sins that are keeping almost everyone from ascending: gossip, resentment, and the idolatry of comfort. I started to cry, but they weren't tears of pain. It was as if my soul was crying out for everyone who was still blind, for all who thought they were saved, but were just living a domesticated version of the gospel. The next day, my pastor came to visit me in the hospital, a man of God, pious, and upright. I told him everything, every detail, without sugarcoating anything. And when I finished, he was pale, speechless. "Angela, I believe, and I know you need to tell the church. We can't wait any longer." I confess, my first impulse was to run away. How could I, an ordinary woman, carry such a heavy revelation? How could I face my brothers in Christ and say that weren't 99% of them ready to meet Jesus? But inside me, the flame of that heavenly heart still burned, and then something amazing happened. That morning, I had a new vision, brief, but clear. We a dry, cracked field, and suddenly, little drops began to fall. Each drop was a person who listened and repented, who forgave, who left comfort, who stopped speaking ill. And then flowers began to bloom in that field. Thousands. Jesus told me just one sentence, even if it's one by one, it's worth it. I woke up with a conviction I never had before. I was going to speak. I was going to shout. I was going to warn, even if they laughed, even if they said it was crazy, because I knew the hourglass is almost empty, and heaven cannot bear to lose another child because of a dirty heart. Days after I left the hospital, my body was still weak, but my soul felt incandescent. It was as if I carried within me a living truth, urgent, sharp, and non-negotiable. The pastor of our church organized a special service. "Angela," he said, "the church needs to hear from you, not from me. You went there. You saw. That night, even while I was still recovering physically, I sat in front of a camera set up on the pulpit. The service was broadcast to hundreds of people, and when the red light came on, I closed my eyes and prayed just one sentence. Lord, speak. Use my voice, but let it be your cry." And I started. I told everything. The dark place where I saw Christians screaming, imprisoned for subtle sins. The moment when I saw Jesus crying, revealing the 3 sins that are preventing the rapture. 1. A gossip disguised as prayer. 2. Their resentment hidden in hearts that are clean on the outside. 3. The love for comfort above love for Christ. I shared the vision of celestial calendar and the prophetic warning I received. September 2025 will be the month of separation between those who are ready and those who live only for appearances. And then, I shared the most painful vision, the moment the trumpet sounded, and millions of believers remained. Yes, believers, Christians, evangelicals, leaders, pastors, musicians, sheep, all saying, "Lord, Lord," but with stained hearts. As I spoke, I saw faces in the church freeze. Some looked shocked, others began to cry silently, and suddenly, something happened. A woman, in the middle of the congregation, stood up with tears in his eyes. "Brothers, I am that person. I always spoke ill of others under the pretense of worry, and I never realized that this darkened my heart." Soon after, a man, leader of the couples ministry, knelt in the hallway and cried out loud, "I've been holding a grudge against my father for 20 years. I've always been active in church, but my heart has never been free. Now I understand why I live empty." The altar began to fill with people, broken, repentant, tearing the heart before the Lord. And I was shaking, because that was exactly what Jesus wanted. Not fame, not visibility, but repentance. In the following days, I received messages from other pastors asking to share their testimonies. Some churches opened their doors, others refused. "We don't want to scare the people," they said. "We are not sure whether it is biblical to set dates." I didn't argue, because my mission, it's not about convincing, it's about warning. At one of these meetings, a young woman came to me in tears. She said, "I was planning to walk away from the church. I was tired, lukewarm, but when I heard your testimony, something burned inside me. I prayed like I'd never prayed before, and today, I forgave my mother, after 8 years of silence. And in that moment, I knew, if just one soul truly prepares itself because of what I experienced, it was worth dying. But I know that there are still thousands sleeping, millions, who think they are ready, but are not. And what scares me the most, it's just that when September comes, there will be no turning back time. As I write these words, my eyes still burn, not out of sadness, but for the brutal conscience that this can be the last warning many will hear before the sky closes. After I shared my testimony in churches, on broadcasts, on social media, I saw all kinds of reactions. Broken people, angry people, people making fun. A man commented on one of the broadcasts, "Another fanatic trying to go viral. Rapture in September. Give me a break." Another sent me a private message saying, "This is heresy. No one can set a date. You are deceiving the weak." But then, on the same day, I received audio of a woman crying. She could barely speak. She just kept saying, "Angela, I heard, and for the first time in 15 years, I asked my Father for forgiveness. It was today. I felt hate, and now, I just want to be ready. And it is for these souls that I continue. Why this is not a message of condemnation. It's a warning message, a spiritual siren. Jesus didn't show me hell to scare me. He showed me what the church refuses to see. It doesn't matter how many hours you spend in church. It doesn't matter how much you tithe. It doesn't matter if you fast, sing, preach, or lead. See your heart carries gossip. See you hold a grudge and say it's just maturity. See you love your stability more than the presence of God. You are in danger. Grave, real, immediate. I'm not here to debate doctrine. I am here to echo what heaven shouted to me. The rapture is near, and 99% of Christians are not ready yet. You may doubt it. You can mock. You can ignore it. But in September, if the trumpet sounds, and you are on the ground while others are climbing up, you will remember this warning, and it may be too late. So please, examine your heart now. Think, what have you been saying about others, even in the name of prayer? Who haven't you forgiven yet? What takes up more space in your heart? Christ or comfort? This is the last call, the last drop of mercy before heaven closes and the bridegroom comes to take the bride. And Jesus will not come looking for a big, rich, or crowded church. He will come and get pure hearts, hearts that shone like the one he gave me. And when he returns, the question will not be, were you an evangelical? But yes, was your heart clean? I'm Angela Whitmore. I died, I saw, and I came back for just one reason. To warn you, don't doubt it, don't put it off, don't play, or you go up, or you stay. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment, share your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.